I think we can get started now. We have a decent number of people that joined us. Thank you so much. Welcome again to this webinar by Philanthropia about the fundraising cycle, or the grant cycle, or the fund cycle, whatever you want to call it. As you've seen, this webinar is being recorded, so we will share the recording later on YouTube, so you can also rewatch it. And hello to everyone on YouTube live as well, where this is also streamed live. Thank you so much. You already discovered the chat function, so that is where you can network with each other. You can connect and use that way if you have a question for me, because in the end we do have time allocated for questions. You can use the Q&A box, which is next to that, because if you write your questions in the chat, it's going to be very difficult for me to find all the questions if we have many comments. But if you use the Q&A box just for the questions that you want me to answer in the end, then I can find them and allocate them in the end. Yeah, again, thanks for joining, and I think we can get started right away with today's presentation. Whoops, okay, I hope you can all see my screen now. So today's topic is mastering the fundraising cycle. This is going to be about the 5 major steps of fundraising, of grant writing, grant fundraising that we have identified, and it will give you a great overview of the steps that you have to take to be more successful in fundraising, in getting grants, and in working in this field. Yeah, my name is Eva Wieners. I'm from Germany. I have a PhD in geography, and I used to work in South America and in Nepal for 7 years, actually. So I have worked with grassroots and small NGOs for the last basically 15 years, and in fundraising intensively for the last 10 years. I have trained thousands of people on and offline in these topics, and I have worked with Philanthropia for I can't actually remember. It's been a while. I think it's almost 10 years now that I have worked with them, and yeah, I'm really excited to be sharing with you today. So after this long time of working in this field, we have basically identified 5 key steps. Maybe if you have taken our flagship course, the 5 obstacles to fundraising success, you also know that those are the 5 steps that we go through there, because we feel like those are the 5 things that you really have to do to be successful here, and the 5 steps that you have to go through to win a grant and to be a sustainable fundraiser, that to have funding all the time subsequently, and to be in good contact with your donors. So we will talk about all those 5 key steps of the cycle. We will start by talking about the fundraising strategy, which is kind of the middle, the base of every success, because if you don't have a strategy, it's going to be very difficult for you to to plan in a long-term way. If you don't have a strategy in place, things will be all over the place. It will be very difficult for you to focus. It will be difficult for you to be effective. So that is why we start with that, because you believe that that is kind of the center of a successful fundraising approach. The next step is about finding donors, donor research. We'll quickly dive into how you can do that, how you can identify donors, etc. You also know that we have online courses and freely available webinars on all of the topics I'm going to talk about. So if there's anything that you want to know more about, that you want to dive in deeper, you can also go to YouTube and check out the webinars we did on those topics. Go to our page, philanthropia.org, check out the online courses we have on those topics for even deeper knowledge about this. So yeah, finding donors is the second step. You need to be able to identify good donors, good partners that could fund your ideas. Then you have to engage with them, which is the donor networking stage, also really crucial for success and something that many NGOs don't like to do and try to jump. Then we will talk about eligibility, which is the stage or the step where you really figure out if you're eligible for a grant, if that's a good fit for you, if you are going to be a good partner for that particular donor, and if that donor is going to be a good partner for you, which is equally important. And then, and only then, we get to the application stage, which is writing a proposal, writing a concept note, whatever it might be. The key thing to understand, and I hope that will also be the key takeaway from today for you, is that this is not like a linear process. Oftentimes when we say, oh, we do fundraising, we support in fundraising, people say, oh, that's grant writing, right? And it's not the same. Proposal writing or grant writing is one step of the cycle, but the other steps are equally as important, and you can't jump one and then hope that everything will work. No, you need to go through all the steps, and it's a cycle. So actually, I'm just noticing that the arrow here is the wrong-sided. So the last arrow between application and finding donors actually has to go to the top again, because it's a cycle. It goes around and around. So you always, after applying, doesn't really matter if you're successful or not, you have to go back to finding donors again. You have to go back to the start. Maybe you even have to refine your strategy. So you go through all the steps again and again and again, and that will really help you to set up your fundraising, your grant raising in a way that is going to be long-term successful, and that is going to stabilize your organization and help you to plan the future and to have a secure future for your organization. So we want to start with a question for you. I think my colleague will activate the poll now. What is your position in your organization? Maybe you can just click it, or let me see if I can. Okay, I guess I can do it myself. So now you should be able to see it, I hope. What is your position in your organization? Are you working in fundraising? Are you working in project management, in communications or public relations? Are you a board member, or is your function a different one? Just to kind of know where you are from and what are you doing. There's a question already in the Q&A box that I can quickly answer, because it's for a certificate. For the free webinars that we offer without charge, we don't offer certificates. But if you take one of our longer webinars, longer seminars and online courses on the page, proposals4ngos.com, philanthropia.org. You can also find them on proposals4ngos.com, but the main page where you can find everything is philanthropia.org. Then you will get a certificate. But for this one, not, because it's completely free. So it's going to be too much of an administration issue for us to offer certificates. Okay, so I think I will close the poll. So I hope you can, I'm not sure if you can see. So we have 35% of people coming from the fundraising department, 37 from project management, 6 from communications or public relations, 13% are board members, and other is 10%. Yeah, so thank you very much for sharing that with us. It's always interesting to see that not all of you are from the fundraising part of your organization, which also makes sense, because I know that especially in small grassroots organizations, oftentimes if you work in project management, you are also responsible for getting the money for your own project. So probably that's why we have so many project managers in this webinar. Thank you very much. Okay, I think now you can see it. Sorry, this poll thing is still new to me. I always have to figure out how many times I have to click. Next administration question. Yes, you will get a recording of this, and I think the some additional information as well by email, so you get the presentation. So let's talk about step 1, the fundraising strategy. That is kind of the first step. If you don't have a fundraising strategy for your organization, I would strongly recommend that you work on one, because that was really the document that will give your fundraising efforts direction. That's really going to be important. It will give you kind of the knowledge, everybody the knowledge to know where you want to go and what do you want to achieve. If you don't have a fundraising strategy, sometimes it can feel like fundraising is on your mind all the time. And that's especially problematic if you are a project manager, because if you're constantly thinking about, oh, how can I raise money for this? And how can I make sure I don't have to fire anyone? And how can I make sure that my job doesn't end next year, etc. That's going to be very, very taxing on your mind. No, you will think a lot about fundraising and maybe not as much anymore about your project work, which is supposed to be your main focus. No, so when you have a strategy, then you will add work points, action points. You will know exactly which steps you have to do. You will know your way forward, and that will really free your mind to do the task that you actually want to do. And again, it will give you direction. It will give you very concrete things that you have to do to reach your goals. So a fundraising strategy should basically answer 3 questions, like every strategy. The first one is, where are you today? So where do you get your money from now? What are your income sources at the moment? So yeah, this could mean government grants or grants from foundations or membership fees, whatever it is. Just trying to understand what your fundraising efforts look like at the moment and if they are successful. So that's a basic strategy. That's a basic analysis. You can do a SWOT analysis even. So looking at strengths, weaknesses, what is that? Opportunities and threats. Sorry, I just have to go through the letters. Really looking at what you are doing at the moment, what is working, what isn't working, and where is opportunity to maybe do more in that field to get more money here. And in this analysis, you really have to be honest, which sounds simple and straightforward, but it's more difficult than you would think, because sometimes you do things for fundraising. For example, if you're also fundraising individual donations, sometimes you have like a charity gala, stuff like that. If that doesn't work, if the amount of money you have to spend or the resources, the time, the energy you have to spend to make those galas work is so much more than what you make, then maybe you have to give up on those things. Or maybe that would be the logical thing. Money is not the only thing that you get. So when you raise a lot of awareness, when you reach new people, etc., then that's obviously also a plus. So it's not only about money, but you critically have to look at the things that you're doing right now and decide if they make sense and if you want to carry them into the future. Then you have to define in the second step, the second question, where do you want to go? Which again, many organizations don't really define for themselves. You need something like a business plan, the projects that you do want to implement in the next 3 to 5 years, the things that you do want to achieve, and then you need to know how much money you need for that. So in the fundraising strategy, you don't need to specify exactly all the activities, etc. That's in your business plan or in your business strategy or your organizational strategy or whatever you want to call that. But you do need to know how much money and what kind of money you need and when, because otherwise your fundraising will not be very directed if you don't know exactly where you need to go. It's a bit like when you go on a hike and you don't know what your goal is, you don't know where you want to go, then you will get lost just by definition because you don't know where to go. If you have clear goals, if you know exactly, okay, in 2 years we need 20,000 euros, in 3 years we need 40,000 euros, then you know the direction. It's no guarantee for reaching either, but at least you know where you have to go or where you want to reach. No? So that is really important. And again, it doesn't mean that everything has to be set in stone. Things change. Sometimes you won't reach those goals, so then you have to adjust. But at least you need to know the direction you want to move in. So that's why you need to know where you want to go. And then comes the most practical and maybe important part, which is how will you get there? So this is where you define which instruments you want to use. So today we'll talk about the instrument grant writing, but there's other things you could do. You could work with foundations, you could collect individual donations, you could talk to major donors, talk to corporations, etc. There's other things you can do. And here you decide what you want to do. And you also decide, if we stick with grant writing, what are the next steps that you want to do? Which are the donors you want to contact? do you have to do research first? Who has to contact whom, etc. And for this part, for this last part, we always recommend to focus on action points. Don't just write a text and write like a long strategy document and a 40-page text describing things, but focus on action points. Have a work plan, like an Excel file where it says, okay, by January, we have to do X, Y, Z. And Tim needs to do X, Jane needs to do Y, and Tina needs to do Z. So with responsibilities, and really focus on the action points, particularly for the first and second quarter. And yeah, focus on that, and then you have a good document. Try to keep the strategy as short as possible. Don't make a book out of it that will only collect dust on the shelves. Include as many people as possible in this, because it's going to be a team effort and everybody needs to be involved. And if everybody's already involved in the planning, then sorry, I'm confused looking at this. Slides are not moving. I'm still in step 1, so I think it's completely fine. I was just staying on the first slide all the time. Yeah, make sure that everybody gets that strategy. Everybody will know what they have to do. Everybody knows their role and their responsibilities, and then the strategy is a living document that will kind of guide you into the future. It needs to be adjusted. It cannot be something that you stick to for 5 years. You have to review it every 6 months to a year. You probably have to adjust it with things you learn and developments on the market, but it is a great starting point. Again, why do you need it as fundraising strategy? Because it sounds like a lot of work, right? But it will make sure that you have a more stable funding base, because you really look at all the tools, all the instruments available, and which ones you can use. It always makes sense to depend not only on one kind of funding, on one donor, because then if you lose that, you are left with nothing. It will tell you who has to do what and when, because if you really focus on those action points, like we said, it will give you a work plan and kind of a direction into the future. And like I said in the beginning, it really frees up mental space for other tasks, because otherwise sometimes fundraising is constantly on your mind, and that is really yeah, it's going to be taxing, and once you have that off your mind, that's really helpful. Now we get to step 2, which is donor research, so finding donors. This probably would be one of the action points included in your strategy, that you want to start donor research, you want to find suitable donors that are a good fit. And here in this step, you really have to put a lot of attention to, because only if you find a donor that is a perfect fit for your organization, for the kind of work you want to do, you will be able to be successful. Because if you apply with a donor that is not a good fit for you, that doesn't have exactly the same mission, the same vision, and wants to support similar things, then they will not fund you. And it doesn't matter how great your proposal, how great everything else, if it doesn't fit, they will not fund you. So yeah, just be sure to find out and research these foundations well to see if they are a good fit. So how can you do that? How can you actually identify potential partners and find foundations that could be a good fit? So the easiest thing, the easiest step you can take is just to research like-minded organizations. So to look at organizations that do very similar work to yours, and look where they get their funding from, because that is a good indication for which donors would fund your work. No? So if you work with children in one community, you can, and there's another NGO that also works with children in a similar field in the next community, then just check who gives money to them, because that donor might also give money to you. And it's also an indication, because you know that that donor is active, that they are really doing work and funding work. No? So that is the easiest thing. You can find that information on the website. You can find it often in the annual reports, because they have to include logos, etc. So that's a very good pointer. Then obviously the donor websites, you find a lot of information there. If you just Google and check foundations, etc., go through them and see if you find a good match and someone with the same or similar mission and vision. Check your own contacts as well. That is also a source of information that often is disregarded. Ask in every single meeting, team meeting that you have, board meeting that you have, let people know that you are constantly looking for potential donors and if they have any information. And sometimes asking once is not enough. So we also recommend to include fundraising in your agenda in every team meeting. Even if you don't have anything important to share, just talking about it again, because that makes sure that everybody sees it as part of their responsibility and puts it at the top of their mind. I always remember this a colleague of mine, she was working for a project that wanted to look for funding for a school, and one of the instruments they wanted to use was crowdfunding. So they were thinking, oh, it would be good if we could find a celebrity who can support our school. So we asked the principal of the school, do you know any celebrities, anybody connected to the school? And she said, no, nobody. And then we asked her again, and she said no. And every single time we met her, we talked about like how other schools did it, etc. And every time we asked her, do you know? She said no. And after 5 times, we talked about how another school had funded their crowdfunding campaign, or had gained traction for the crowdfunding campaign by sharing it through the regional football club. And suddenly she said, oh yeah, the father of one of the kids in my school actually plays for the football club in the town, which is quite big. They play Bundesliga, it's the highest league in Germany. So we were like, that is a celebrity. That is exactly what we are looking for. But she didn't come up with that immediately. It took 5 meetings for her to come up with that, because we don't think straight always. Sometimes we know things, but they're not at the top of our minds. So you have to look at things from different perspectives, and also this for your own context. Sometimes we don't draw the connection immediately. So if it's always on your agendas for team meetings, for board meetings, etc., people will start to think differently about it and also look at it from different perspectives. And you'll be surprised how many contacts you already have within your organization. I'm sure of that. Then asking current and former donors for information is an easy step to get information and to find out if there's opportunity. So when you have one donor that has already funded you, you can always ask them for follow-up funding, because if they've chosen once to support you, then why would they not choose a second time if they have the money available? Obviously, maybe they will say, no, it's not possible, we don't give follow-up grants, but well, it doesn't hurt to ask, as long as you have a good relationship, obviously. So that is always the very first thing you should do. But then you can also ask them for a recommendation. So you can ask if they know any other donors, because I mean, not every foundation knows everybody. It's not like they have a weekly lunch and all talk all the time, but they obviously have connections to each other. They talk to each other. So maybe they have a recommendation for you that you could then use to contact someone. So really try to tap into that and talk to your donors. That's why a good relationship with your donors is so crucial, because they can offer you way more than money. They can also offer you connections and other information. Then there's databases, like the one, this one is one that we actually run. It's called donordatabase.org, where we have 5,000 donors available that you can search. And so you just put your area of interest, your country, and then it gives you a list of donors that fund in that area of interest in that country. So that's a very good start. Obviously, from there, you still have to further research those donors. It's not enough if you just have a name, but it's a great starting point. And that database is actually free to try for a week. So if you want to check it out, then do so, because I think it's really helpful. It's called donordatabase.org. And then there's text documents as well that can give you a lot of information, particularly in the US, because in the US, everybody is needs to share, or like not everybody, but foundations and And NGOs need to share their tax forms, which are called the 990 or the 990 PF. And that's where you can find a lot of information. And if you're interested in learning more about how to do that and how to actually get that information, how to analyze it, we do have a free course about that on philanthropia.org that you can just sign up for and check out what Eric has to tell you about the 990 PF, which is really surprising, the kind of information you can find in there. So those are kind of tools and things where you can find information and find donors. But now we get to organizing that knowledge, because if you just keep researching, I mean, I love research. I'm a scientist, so I can spend days and days and days researching. I wouldn't find an end if I wouldn't put an end to it, because that's the part I really like. But you do have to kind of include a strategic approach to it. Otherwise, you will not spend your time in the most valuable way, because you will, if you keep looking, you will keep finding potential donors. But after, I don't know, a couple of hours, maybe 1 or 2 days, you probably have found the most promising ones. Because the more hidden a donor, the less likely they are to give as well. Because if they would want to give to new NGOs, then they probably would have a good website. If they don't have that at all, well, you should still contact them. But yeah, after some threshold, I think it becomes clear that some foundations don't want to be contacted and stuff. So you need to set a specific amount of time for your research, where you say, okay, I'll do this for 2 days, I do this for 1 day, a couple of hours. It also depends, obviously, on the size of the project, if you can justify spending that much time, etc. And if you go to this in a strategic way, you will only spend a limited amount of time on research. Then if you organize your research in a strategic way, in a kind of form that we will also show you on the next slide, you will not miss a deadline, because you will include all important information that you research in that file. And then you also have the deadlines there, because otherwise it can happen very quickly that you miss a deadline, that you get confused and you don't know the schedule of all the proposals that you want to write. And if you have one file where you can share and collect all this information, you can also share the results with your team and divide tasks and responsibilities. So again, this goes back to these action points that you also have in the strategy. You will have something similar in this file. And everybody needs to know what they have to do, because if you have tasks, if you have things that need to be done, but nobody does them, nobody feels responsible, then they are not worth anything. Also, you need to have a forum or a form of this that you can share with others, where everybody knows what they have to do. And it will also guide your way ahead, because you will include all the steps that need to be done, and you will include the steps ahead. And that way you know what to do. Again, you don't have to think every day, oh, what was the thing I needed to do today? What's the next thing? How do I engage with this person, this donor? But your file will kind of tell you. So just giving you an example here. This is a very, very simple way of organizing donor research that we use even for bigger organizations, though. So because often in an Excel file, that's enough, and you can kind of work with that. And this is an example, something I did. This was a research project I did for a women's organization in Nepal. And what you do is that you find donors, for example, through the database I showed you, through all these other techniques. And then you start writing down the names. Obviously, this is the first row, first column. And then the website, because you need contact information, you need to know where you can research that foundation. And then we always write down the focus area, what do they work in? So in this case, it's women's issues, innovative approaches to media and technology, lesbian and transgender rights, violence against women and girls, etc. So those are the focus areas that these organizations work in. Then the range, it's very important. How much do they fund? Because that will also inform the decision if you want to apply there or not. So sometimes it's not clear how much they give, but in other cases it's very clear. And if you are looking for $1,000, doesn't make sense to apply with donors that only give 100,000 plus. And the opposite, if you are looking for 100,000, a donor that only gives 1,000 probably isn't the best fit for you. So that is crucial information that you need to know. Then about the ranking system, that's a ranking system that we use to decide who to contact first. So we use a 3-category ranking system. High means the likelihood of that donor maybe funding us or at least being interested is very high. So we think that is the highest probability of success. Then we have middle, and we also have low. And here you don't see one, but I usually also include the low ones, even though I would probably never contact those. But if you do this research exercise and then you do it again after 6 months or after a year, because the donor landscape changes, if you don't write down the ones that you thought were interesting, but then decided, oh, well, no, that's a low ranking, then you will just research them again because you forget, because you can't remember everything. Or maybe somebody else does it and they don't know that you've already researched that donor and have decided it's not a good fit. So I would also include them so you don't have to always double and triple research the same donors. Then you include application information. So how do they want you to apply with them? Stuff like you need to be registered. When the registration is through, you can send a proposal, or you can just send in a proposal, just with a call when there's no calls, etc. You can also put dates here, etc. And usually then you can include another column here with the deadline, if there's a specific deadline. And you have notes where you can just write down what you saw. Maybe sometimes that is also already a tip that I want to give myself, like some intelligence that I found. For example, here on the second one, you can see I wrote down emphasis on the sustainability plan, because throughout the explanations on what they wanted to see, they were always talking about the importance of the sustainability plan. So I write down for myself, well, this is particularly important. So when I go to writing the proposal later, I know that I really have to look out for the sustainability plan and put emphasis on that. And then there's to-dos. Well, see, the deadline is on the end here, but you can also put it in front, doesn't matter. And then there's to do. So what are the particular things that you do have to do and implement in the next, whatever, quarter, 3 months, etc. This is usually, you should also write down a name, who has to contact them, who has to do what are the steps, etc. Yeah, with this you can go then, and when we talk next about the networking, you will see you collect information, you collect intelligence, and everything you learn from donors you have to include in this file so everybody can take advantage of that. So when you talk to whatever you call the Global Fund for Women, you talk to someone and they tell you, well, we will have a specific call for your country in 3 months, write that down. If they tell you, well, we'd like to see more diverse boards, whatever it might be, the information you collect while talking to them, you include that here so it doesn't get lost, and so you can strategically use it when you get down to writing your proposal. So that was step 2. Now we get to step 3, which is networking, still not writing the proposal. Don't jump ahead here. So after you found donors, you've identified donors where you think, oh, they are a great fit, that would work. You have to engage with them and network with them, because still people give to people. We estimate that in development, up to 70% of funding is given through negotiations instead of through open calls. And that doesn't mean that something wrong is happening behind closed doors, anything like that. Not at all. It just means that that some foundations like that way of giving out funding. Instead of having an open call and hundreds of proposals, they like to know their partners first, talk to them, communicate with them, and then decide if that's a good fit and if that works. So yeah, how can you network with donors? What does that mean? It basically means connecting with people that would later decide if your grant will be given or not. And it means connecting with a person, because people give to people, even though these big organizations, these big donors organizations, sometimes when you just fill out an online form, it feels like there's no human behind that, but there actually is a human being reading your proposal and deciding about your fate. So try to connect with a human being, with another person there. So you have to, kind of find out who the person is that could be responsible for your area. Here we have the example of the Ford Foundation. They tell you names. Sometimes that's not that easy. So then you have to maybe use social media to figure out who's responsible for your line of work. You can ask others if they know someone, etc. Then once you know who you want to connect with, you request a meeting. That should be the first step, trying to establish a relationship with that person from that organization. To connect, you can use social media, you can use email, phone, etc. Once you get that meeting, which is a science of its own, you have to ask questions in those meetings. Don't just tell them about what you want to do, but try to learn about what they want to do. Because in the end, they are looking for a partner and you are looking for a partner. Yes, money is involved, but it's also about partnership. No, you really want to have a donor that has the same goals, same values, that wants to work with you on a partnership basis. So ask questions, try to learn something about them, find out about the donor's priorities, because that on the one hand, that will tell you if they are really a good partner. And on the other hand, it will make it easier for you to write a proposal that they will love. Because if you really tick all their boxes, and if you write something that they really want to see that aligns 100% with their priorities, etc., then the likelihood of you getting a grant and winning a grant is much higher than if you just use what's on their homepage and just run on that. So and then all that information that you learn, all that intelligence that you gain, you have to include in your form again so that you can use it long term, and other people can also learn and use this in the long run. Once you are in good contact, try to engage regularly with donors. Also, if you already have a grant from them, ask if you can add them to your newsletter. That is going to be really helpful because you can keep them informed. And once they are already on your roster, once they are already working with you, you can invite them to field visits, events, etc. But that usually only works when they're already funding you, when the relationship is much closer at some point. So donor networking. We have a full webinar about this on our YouTube page. So if you want to learn more about that, how to connect, who to connect with, etc., you can check out that webinar. It's going to be very helpful. Then we get to step 4, which is eligibility. So how can you actually figure out if you're eligible for a grant? That's closely connected to donor research, but I always hammer this point home and talk a lot about it because that is where most mistakes happen. I think in big open calls, up to 40% of proposals fail because of issues of eligibility. There's been data here in Germany where for calls that are really big calls for huge organizations, they have professional fundraisers. Still, 30% of proposals fail because of formal issues that are closely connected to eligibility. So that is where most mistakes happen. So if you are able to figure out if you're eligible for a grant, honestly eligible for a grant, you're already past almost 40% of all other applicants. So trying to figure out if you can apply. If you're not eligible, you cannot apply. So if that grant, that funder, that donor doesn't give to the causes you support, the country you work in, the kind of work you do, etc., then you're not eligible and then you shouldn't apply. And I know that oftentimes people think, well, but if my proposal is just good enough, if they just read about the project, they will love it, so they will still do it, but it doesn't work that way. Donors get so many applications nowadays because of the accessibility through the internet, etc. They are completely overwhelmed. So they have to make those strict rules to make sure that yeah, that the amount of proposals that they have to deal with is less, is manageable. So they make those rules and you have to follow them. If you read closely the guidelines, the requirements they give you, the Q&A documents, etc., that you find on the website or that you can find sometimes as downloadables, etc., it also gives you clues as to what to include in the application, because it will tell you what to focus on, what you should put emphasis on. So that your proposal is stronger. And questions of eligibility can also give you an opening to connect with donors. So if you have questions that you cannot answer with the information on the website, etc., then you can connect with them and ask them about it. And then you have a good starting point for a conversation, because that's what you want in the end. You want to network with donors, you want to connect with them, you want to have a personal relationship before you send anything in, if that is possible. It's not always possible, but when it is, then you should really do that. And the document where you find most of that information are the guidelines. If they give guidelines, if it's an open grant call, open application, they usually give you guidelines, and that is what you have to read, and you have to read them carefully. And I always recommend you print out the guidelines, put them next to your computer for as long as you work on this project, because you will have to consult them many, many times. And if you're not sure if you're eligible, you should check in with the donor, ask them about it to be 100% sure that you are really a good fit for them, because otherwise you will not get the grant. We actually have developed a checklist, an eligibility checklist that you can also download from proposals4ngos.com, I think, where you can, you have 7 questions that you have to answer with a definite yes. And if that's not a yes, then you at least have to go back and figure out if that donor really is a good fit for you, and be very careful about it, because it's just such a waste of resources, such a waste of time if you write a proposal and then they get it and they just throw it into the trash immediately. It seems super straightforward, and usually, I mean, I can't see your faces now, but I can imagine that you sit in front of your computers and you say, yeah, of course, we're not stupid. What is she talking about? But in reality, I proofread a lot of proposals. I see what gets sent out. And that, again, is one of the most common mistakes. We've had the example of one call for proposals that was for human rights grants. And it was a call, I think, for all of Asia. And it said, every country can apply, or organizations from every country can apply except for India. I don't know what the reason was, or some legal stuff. I don't know what it was, or maybe there was like a specific grant program for India, but it said everybody can apply except for India. And they received, I think, around 1,000 proposals. And can you guess how many proposals from India? It was actually 500. So almost half of the people ignored that and sent a proposal anyways, and did all that work for nothing, because they all got discarded immediately because India was not on the roster. So people do that all the time, and it just doesn't work that way. So really watch out here, be careful, and try to avoid that. Yeah, and then if you figured out if you are eligible, then you get to the 5th stage, which is proposal writing, which is application. So again, that is part of the cycle, and it is super important, but it is not the most important thing. It's not the only thing that counts, but it's one of the steps, the last step before you kind of go back into the cycle. And super important that you write a great proposal, but it's not the only important step. So here I have another question for you that I wanted to ask. You see, start. Have you written a successful proposal in the past? Yes, no, or you're not sure, but you have one on the pipeline. Okay. Okay, so the majority more than 50% already has written successful proposals. That's great. And 30% have not, and 19% have one in the pipeline. So it's basically half-half between the ones that were already successful and the ones that maybe not yet, but on the way. That's great. Thank you very much for sharing. So then when you get to this stage and you've already applied successfully, you also know that in this stage, you kind of have to send what the donor wants to see, no? When you ask for funding after this process, it's not always a proposal that you have to send. Sometimes you have to send a concept note. Sometimes it's way more informal. Sometimes it's just like a letter or something, just a budget. Can be as simple as that sometimes. But at some point, you have to get to the point where you ask for funding and support, and then offer the donor whichever document, whichever form they want, no? So you have to do the ask at some point. And then ideally, because you've been networking with them, you've asked many questions, you understand them very well, you already know what the appropriate way is. So what kind of document you have to send, proposal or concept note? Well, how does the budget need to look like? What needs to be included? How many pages, etc. Ideally, you have found out about all that stuff. Yeah, ideally you have already found out about all that stuff and now know exactly what you want to do. Yeah, then you keep establishing partnerships with those donors. Being precise here obviously is important. A proposal should always be as short as possible, but as long as necessary. So including everything that needs to be included, but not just cluttering pages and filling pages and pages with information. So be as precise as possible. So usually when your donors give you guidelines, then you have to include and use the structure for that they give you in the guidelines, exactly that. But if you don't have any guidelines, the things that usually have to be covered in a proposal would be the introduction, the summary, what's the project about, what are you going to do? And then you have a project rationale or a project background. So what is the issue you want to solve? Why is that an issue? What's the justification for your project? Why are you the perfect partner to do this project? What's your expertise, etc. Then you talk about the project goals and objectives. So what do you want to achieve with your project? What is the change that you want to kind of instigate with your project for the target groups? How do you want to do that? That is what strategies and activities describe. So what are the actual things that you want to do to achieve those goals? So there's a distinction between those two. The first part is about what you want to achieve, describing the impact that you hope to have, the changes that you hope that you can kind of start. And the second part is about exactly what you want to do. So do you want to run a training? Do you want to build something? Do you want to pass out food? Do you, whatever it is, no? And then you talk about the projected results. What do you think the exact results will be? The distinction between output, outcome, impact, etc. So what are the exact things that are going to happen because of your project? Then you talk about beneficiaries or the target group, participants, whatever you want to call it. Who are you going to work with? That's usually put into the two groups of direct and indirect beneficiaries. Then you obviously have to include a budget. How much money do you need? Where is the rest coming from? All that. A timeline. So what do you want to start this project? When is it supposed to end? What are milestones along the way? Usually you need a monitoring and evaluation plan. Sometimes that is connected to a log frame. So how do you want to be able to tell in the end that the project was successful, or that you've achieved everything you wanted to achieve? And a sustainability plan. So how can you make sure that your project is going to be there in the long term, that you will have impact long term, that the money the donor is giving you will also have long-term impact. Those are usually the things that you kind of have to cover if you don't have any guidelines that you have to follow. Again, about proposal writing, we have countless resources that you can look at. We have a full online course about writing the proposal. We also have free webinars that you can check on YouTube. So please refer to that if you want to learn more about these topics. Yeah, and those are the 5 key steps to fundraising success, in our opinion. So starting with a strategy, developing a document where you really understand clearly what you're doing today, where you want to go, and how you want to get there. Then starting to find donors, starting to find great partners, great donors that are going to help you to achieve your mission, and that you can also help to achieve theirs. Then you try to engage with them, you develop a network, you figure out a way to meet them, talk to them, have a human relationship. That leads into being able to really say if you're eligible for a grant, if that's a good fit, if your values also fit with the donor's values, etc. And then you apply. In the last stage, you get to the application stage, you send out a proposal or a concept note, whatever it might be, whatever they want to see, and hopefully are successful in this process. If you want to learn more about this entire cycle, we have a free resource guide that you can also download. It's about the fundraising cycle. So you can just click and I think probably somebody will be sharing the link. And we also have a full course, obviously, about the fundraising strategy. We also have one about proposal writing, networking, everything. The cost for each of those modules is $79, and it comes included with a full proposal template, the checklist, etc. And today, because you joined, we will give it away for 50% off. So if you get it today, it's only $39.50. So I'm sure there's going to be the link shared for this. We have many other online courses on philanthropia.org that you can check out. For example, how to create a log frame, how to raise funds from USAID, online fundraising, etc. So check out those courses if you can, because they have way more even detailed information about these things, and you can really learn from scratch. We also offer you a coupon code to get 30% off on those courses. So with the code fundraise, you can get a discount on all of our online courses that you can see on philanthropia.org. We have the donor database as well. I already mentioned that. You can find it at donordatabase.org, and that is where you can do research, where you can get lists of donors and names of donors that you can then further research and contact and network with. And now we still have 5 minutes for questions. I went on a bit too long, but there's just a lot of content that I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much for listening. Good luck with everything. And let's see, I think we have a couple of questions that I quickly want to get into. Is there any standard format for the fundraising strategy? No, you just use the format that works for you and your organization. It needs to be a living document, so I wouldn't try to make it like a PDF, a printed, whatever. I would keep it in Word, maybe Excel if you for the work plan, etc., so that people can adjust it and work with it actually. What is the recommendation process to have a mapping of donors and a schedule for available funding? Well, I would, it depends how your resources look like. If you have someone who is a full-time fundraiser, you can say that they do research once a week, maybe for half day, and that way you're always up to date. If that's one of the many responsibilities that you have as a project manager, you can say, okay, 1 day a month, whatever, and just keep repeating it. Or if you have a specific project, then it's I think you should do like intense research and then maybe research again after 6 months, whatever, but you can always update those tables. Usually when you research for one project, oftentimes you can also use that same information for different projects again. And then with that, you will get deadlines, you will get the schedule, all of that. yeah, for some donors, the request for a concept note or proposal is not regular. And in that case, how to manage. I would, if they give you a form, if they give you like something that you should fill out, always work with that. If they let you know what they want to see, then you have to show them exactly that and exactly go with the things that they want. And if not, you can just include the things that you think are important. But usually the structure I showed you is what you should include. I think it's extremely important that you are able to make a good case for why the project should be funded. Why is it necessary? Because if the donor doesn't understand that, the rest doesn't matter anymore. And focus on those things. Yeah, fundraising is basically the same as resource mobilization. Yeah, it's just two different words. If you are a just established organization, what's the chance of your proposal being successful? Well, you have slimmer chances, that's for sure. But there are still chances. If you just started, I would start with small grants. So looking for small grant programs, because they often allow new NGOs to apply. They allow new players to enter the field. So don't start with like the high numbers immediately. And you can also look for partners that have been established for a while, that have a long-standing relationship with donors, etc. Go through them, work with them. That can also create some rapport for you. And yeah, try to network, try to establish your network, try to reach out to as many potential donors as you can. And that way, it really leads to success in the long run. But I would start small, especially if you are a brand new NGO. We do not provide fundraising consultancy services at that scale. We have all the online courses. We have, for example, now in November, we will run a program which is called Proposal November, where if you sign up, you get like a 1-hour consultation with me, just one-on-one. So if that is something you're interested in, that's for a very good price, for a fraction of the price that we would usually charge if you enter that program. So if you're interested in that, that is something we do, but usually we don't offer those consultancy services. So that's like a small window that you can get in. Are there any other tools that we can use to answer the last two questions for the strategy? Well, not real tools, but you can look into project development, etc., where it shows you how to write a budget, how to kind of learn how much money you need for specific things, etc. I think if you look at how to develop a business plan, that will also give you a lot of information on how to develop the fundraising plan. Okay, I think those are all the questions that I see at the moment. The rest is very, very specific ones, like the last one here, the newly registered agricultural cooperative may get support. Yes, obviously. All organizations can get support. Again, if you are small and new, it's a bit more tricky, it's more work, but it's not impossible. So it always makes sense to try. And it always makes sense to try to reach out, and again, start small, start with small grants. That could be a good first step, and move on from there. If you have any more questions that I wasn't able to answer, you can always reach out to info@philanthropia.org. Send us your questions. We do run Q&A sessions from now and then, so we can also collect questions to answer in those sessions. And this recording will be shared, so if you've missed part of it, you can rewatch it on YouTube. Again, if you've been following it for a while and you like these webinars, if you made good experiences, etc., we love to hear your stories. So if you want to share anything with us, please do so via email or in the YouTube comments. That will be lovely. And yeah, anything that you want to reach out about, please contact us at info@philanthropia.org. Thanks again, and see you in our next webinar. Bye-bye.